These kind of miracle reports are not simply the domain of the 20th and 21st centuries or of a particular movement. They've been documented through a wide range of movements throughout church history, and sometimes more in certain periods than in others, but clearly continuous throughout history. The church fathers often defended Christianity by pointing to public knowledge of healings or deliverance from evil powers that took place. In fact, scholars have argued that in the 3rd and 4th centuries, those kinds of reports were probably the leading cause of conversion to Christianity. Augustine, a very well-known North African church father, Augustine talked about having believed that these things didn't really happen very much in his day until it came to his attention that they were still happening. And in the course of a couple years, his diocese collected, I think, 70 affidavits of healings taking place, including extraordinary events, healings of blindness and so on. One of the cases was himself being healed of something, but another case was that of a friend of his named Innocent. Innocent had anal fistulas, and an operation had removed some of these, but operations were quite painful back then. They had no anesthesia. You can well imagine an operation in that part of the body being quite painful. And they found that they hadn't gotten them all. And Innocent was terrified at the prospect of having to go through this again. Sometimes people bled to death during surgeries in that era. And so Augustine was with Innocent the night before the next surgery was scheduled. And Innocent was crying out to God, wailing to God to please heal him. Augustine was so distracted by the wailing that he couldn't pray much himself. He could only think, God, if your heart can't be moved by such wailing, what could possibly move you? The next morning, as they went to the surgery, the doctors removed the bandages and found that Innocent was completely healed. Augustine was present and was an eyewitness on that occasion. We have other accounts in history. I've mentioned sometimes in Wesley's ministry, including an apparent raising from the dead in his ministry. A Lutheran pastor by the name of Johann Christoph Blumhardt, one of the only 3 people that Karl Barth later called his mentors. Bultmann was a New Testament scholar who just dismissed the miraculous, and he dismissed the stories of Blumhardt. But we have Blumhardt's journals, we have letters of correspondence that give us first-hand eyewitness accounts of healings that took place, even apparently a couple raisings from the dead. One of the most striking examples in history, I think, because of how it was used, was the healing of Pascal's niece. Most people are familiar with Pascal, especially from the computer program. Pascal is, in a sense, the father of the modern computer, a brilliant mathematician, but also he went on to become a theologian in his short life. But Pascal's niece had a running open eyesore. It smelled bad. It had been going on for a long period of time. And then she was touched with, at a Jansenist monastery, she was touched with a holy thorn from Jesus' crown, a relic. Now, I think probably all of us today would say this wasn't really a thorn from Jesus' crown of thorns, but it was a contact point for faith. As she was touched with this, trusting in God, she was instantly and publicly cured. And it created such a sensation that Queen Mother of France sent her own personal physician who verified this having taken place. The detractors were silenced. There was just too much evidence. It was a public healing. Pascal was convinced, but later on David Hume said, look at this. We have all this evidence for this healing. We have more evidence for this healing than we have evidence for healings in the Bible. and yet we know that this cannot have happened, and therefore we have no reason to trust any witnesses for healing. Well, that was quite a circular argument, saying we know that this cannot have happened, despite all the witnesses. Why could it not have happened? Because Hume says we know that miracles don't happen. Why do we know that miracles don't happen? Because he says we have no credible eyewitnesses for miracles. That is the sort of argument for which the phrase non sequitur was created. It's totally illogical. But at the time, Protestants had been dismissing Catholic miracles for a long time. The Catholics also didn't respect the Jansenists. They seemed to be too Protestant for the Catholics and too Catholic for the Protestants. And so everybody was willing to dismiss this well-attested miracle. It was part of the division of Christianity that opened up the way for Hume to make his argument and to get away with it. But I think today, in a setting where we're much more willing to listen to one another, we can recognize, look, the evidence for this was striking. Hume himself admitted that the evidence for it was striking. He simply dismissed it. And I don't think that today we should let people get away with simply dismissing such compelling evidence.